Tonight, the New York Knicks head into Boston because it is ring ceremony night as the Boston Celtics look to go back-to-back NBA champions for the first time since the 2017-2018 Golden State Warriors, as well as the Minnesota Timberwolves take on the Los Angeles Lakers, the debut of the one, the only Bronny James alongside his dad, LeBron Raymond James. With that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for our annual exercise. I don't go as in depth with the NBA as I do with the National Football League in terms of my picks, but I do like to give you my playoff predictions. Seeds 1 through 8. I don't do the play-in tournament or anything like that, but I will give you my picks for the NBA playoffs. Seeds 1 through 8 in the West. We'll go for the entire playoff bracket. I'll give you some of my thoughts on the best teams in the NBA. Now, we do know that in the NBA, again, ever since that 2017-2018 Warriors team that has gone back to back, the 2019 Toronto Raptors, the 2019-2020 NBA bubble Los Angeles Lakers, the Phoenix Suns in 21, the Warriors in 22, Denver obviously in 2023, and then Boston last year, 2024. Those teams did not make the conference finals the next year, which is interesting to me. So can Boston break that streak this year? Spoiler alert, I do think that T-Wolves Lakers as well as Knicks Celtics are both going to be playoff previews. When will they face off? You're about to find out. Let's start with the East. So, in a little bit of a wild card here. So, I think that the East has obviously gotten better during the past couple of years. We have the rise of the New York Knicks, Jalen Brunson now with Karl-Anthony Towns, that pairing to go along with the other Villanova guys the Knicks have. We saw the roster the Knicks put together last year. We saw that they took Indiana to the brink. And as I made the argument, if Jalen Brunson didn't get hurt, they might have made an Eastern Conference Finals appearance. So they are right there. Indiana, we saw what they did with Tyrese Alburn, Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, and that group last year. A lot of people expecting Indiana to get a little bit better. They obviously need to get better defensively. They were just out shooting people. Orlando, you have the likes of Pablo Banchero, you have the Wagner brothers, you have Jalen Suggs. I think they need to add a little bit more shooting. I think they are obviously there with Bamba and the size that they have with Wagner, as I mentioned. They are very tall. They are very lengthy. Jonathan Isaac as well. They're to me are going to be growing up. I think Pablo Banchero is going to be a star in this league. You have Cleveland, where obviously that's the market where I'm in. Where again you have Donovan Mitchell, you have Darius Garland, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley. They brought the core four back, if you will. New head coach and Kenny Atkinson. Will Evan Mobley finally prove to be that number 3 overall pick he was in 2021? You have the huge addition out in Philadelphia of Paul George to go along with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, though Paul George is already injured and Joel Embiid, we know, is not going to play back-to-backs. Then you have Miami. We know with their history, Eric Spoelstra, Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, with those guys, along with Bam Adebayo, bring to the table cannot be discounted. So I just named 7 teams in the East. Not one of those teams I have as my number 1 seed because I think we're all forgetting about Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think a healthy Milwaukee team now with a full year with Doc Rivers under his belt as the head coach. I think the Milwaukee Bucks, again, while people were talking about the Knicks, Tom Thibodeau wears people down. They went a long distance last year. I think they're a very good regular season team. I think that they could be that 2 seed. The number 3 seed I'm going to have is the Boston Celtics. Again, I think the loss of Al Horford, who was massive for them. And we don't know if Kristaps Porzingis is going to stay healthy. He was in and out of the lineup last year. Now, last year they didn't need him. But Joe Mazzulla, we know, is a young head coach, very bright. We saw he was assistant, obviously, under Ime Udoka. Smart coach. I think Joe Mazzulla made some good adjustments, and clearly the players buy into him. but now the Celtics are not hunting. They are the hunted. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, that dynamic duo is great. Can Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Drew Holiday, those guys give them as much productive. I think Boston's going to be that team that sort of takes a little bit of a step back in the regular season, turns on the switch in the postseason. We're all going to have questions about them as if, last year was a fluke because they went through the East with no challenge, and then they'll turn it on in the postseason. Number four, again, I like Indiana. I think they're a rising team. Halpern, Siakam, Margarine, Miles Turner. They got ball players. TJ McConnell, obviously. Like they got ball players. They can play. And look, RR is a very good coach. I think Indiana takes another step up. They'll get the four. I'm in the same boat with Orlando, who I think is just a tick better than Cleveland. Again, I know the Cavs beat them last year, but it took them 7 games. The Cavs were the better team last year, but Orlando was more physical. And a year in Pablo Banchero's belt. And again, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley have injury histories in Cleveland. To me, the Cavs roster, they really did not do anything to upgrade the roster. And you could have made a case, going into last year's playoffs. The Cavs could have been the 2 seed, which where a lot of analysts had this Cleveland team at. You could have made a case, though, they could have also been a 5 or 6 seed. Miami was obviously banged up towards the end of last year, and so was Philadelphia. Uh, all of the Sixers and Heat, 6 or 7, Miami 8. Again, these two teams, history will tell you if you match up against them in the postseason, they can give anybody a run for their money. Philadelphia has the most talent as anybody. Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid. I think out of the big three that anybody has, it's a perfect fit. My issue for the Sixers, again, just comes back to health. And I don't think they have as much bench depth as in Orlando, as in Indiana, as in New York, which I think matters. Again, I think for Milwaukee, Giannis Antetokounmpo has a great chance to win MVP again this year. A lot of people are talking Knicks, Celtics, Indiana, Orlando, Cleveland, Philly, Miami. No one is talking about this Milwaukee Bucks team. I think they're going to sneak up on people. I think they're going to be really good this year, at least in the regular season, which then gets me to the postseason, where we have not been able to trust Giannis Antetokounmpo or Damian Lillard during the past few years. I think the same scenario happens again. I think Jimmy Butler walks into Miami, that Heat team that has confidence. They play the Bucks very well. The 8 seed, just like 2 years ago, will once again knock off the 1 seed. Miami knocks off Milwaukee. And Doc Rivers is fired and they blow a lead or whatever have you, and the Bucks are in dismantle all over again. Great regular season, cannot come through in the postseason. A rematch of last year's first round. I got Sixers Knicks, same spot, 7-2. I think Philadelphia, again, with Paul George, if he's healthy, can give the Knicks a little bit of a series. I don't trust Joel Embiid to be healthy for the series. And if they don't have Embiid, I don't know who guards Karl-Anthony Towns down low. Josh Hart, to me, will have another big series for the Knicks. Dispose of Philadelphia, who will again be wondering, what the hell do we do? Is it time to move on from Joel Embiid? I think Cleveland will again give Boston a little bit of run for their money in the first round. I don't think it will be a cakewalk as it was last year for Boston, but 3 versus 6, a rematch of last year's 1 versus 4 matchup. I think the Celtics win. My guess is probably in 6 games. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown trade off once again of who is the best player every other night. Boston's is a better overall team than Cleveland. And then Orlando and Indiana would be a very fun 5 versus 4 matchup. Indiana getting home field. But again, they do have Turner, they do have Siakam. I think Pablo Banchero, this is the moment where he arrives. He finally will win a playoff series. Pablo Banchero becomes the breakout star for the Eastern Conference this year. Last year was sort of, Tyrese Halliburton on the scene. Jalen Brunson becomes a superstar. Out west, we had Shea Gilgeous-Alexander become that guy. We had Anthony Edwards become that guy. I think this year, Pablo Banchero becomes that guy for the Orlando Magic, who knock off Indiana in the first round. which then will lead to a second round and all Florida matchup between number 8 Miami, number 5 Orlando. Very weird out east that would be a semifinal matchup. But again, I got Orlando. And I think Celtics Knicks, which should have been the Eastern Conference Finals matchup, which will again be the opening matchup of this year's NBA season. I think that's a second round matchup. You got the number 3 Celtics against the number 2 Knicks. I just think Tom Thibodeau, who is obviously a former Celtics coach, Boston's going to know him. I think he just wears down his players way too much. Cat gets exhausted. Jalen Brunson gets exhausted. Cat does not come through in the clutch as much as New York would want them to. The pressure is back on Jalen Brunson's shoulders. Boston just takes over. They have too many good players. They're just a tiny bit deeper. Maybe Kristaps Porzingis, if healthy, goes into the Garden as a big game. Boston, as the 3 seed, advances to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they will defeat a very young and up and coming Orlando team. Probably be a sweep, or at least a gentleman's sweep at worst. Orlando, although like Indiana, kind of feel like is a piece or two away, but they match up better with Boston because of the fact of their length. I just think, again, they need more shooting. Uh, but I think the Celtics will become the first team since that 17-18 Warriors team to get back to the NBA Finals. I think it will be a little more of a difficult road. They'll take the Eastern Conference, in the regular season a little bit softer, not as hard as they did a year ago. Celtics advance as the 3 seed in the East. Out West, I actually think the top 3 teams are the Minnesota Timberwolves, obviously Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle. You got Dante DiVincenzo now to go along with Rudy Gobert. Mike Conley is still there. Naz Reid is still there. I think Anthony Edwards takes another step up. I think he could be in the MVP conversation again. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander will definitely be in the MVP conversation again to go along with Chet Holmgren, Lou Dort, Josh Giddey, and those fighting Oklahoma City Thunder who did get the number 1 seed a year ago. I don't think they're going to surprise people the way they did a year ago. Again, I think they're a very good team. I think they battle with Minnesota the whole way there for that number 1 seed. Last year, Oklahoma City, we all thought they were going to be a plain team. They snuck up on everybody. Same thing with Minnesota. As I talked about last year during the NBA playoffs, this NBA playoff was a changing of the guard. No more Steph Curry, at least in the playoffs. He was in the play-in tournament. LeBron jousted in 4 games by the Denver Nuggets. Kevin Durant jousted in 4 games by the Minnesota Timberwolves. LeBron, Steph, KD did not win a single actual playoff game. Obviously, Golden State did not even win the play-in tournament. That they were a 10 seed. So that was the changing of the guard. I think we got one more changing of the guard coming in this year in the West. It is Jalen Green, Sagoon, Jabari Smith, Reed Shepard, led by Ime Udoka, who made a massive surge at the end of last year to try to get into the Western Conference postseason. I think the Houston Rockets will be the 3rd best team. And again, they'll be right there battling with Oklahoma City, with Minnesota for those top seeds all year long. I think the Rockets are basically what the Thunder and T-Wolves turned into a year ago. Jalen Green will turn into a superstar MVP candidate. Shagun is his number 2. Again, I love the fact they got the likes of Reed Shepard, along with Jabari Smith there as well to provide more shooting and better role production. Number 4, I can't count out Nikola Jokic, who I still think is the best player in the world. I can't count out Jamal Murray. I still think Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray. You remember over the summer, I did my best duos in the NBA once all the moves went down with Paul George and obviously Mikal Bridges going to the Knicks over there. That'll help them as well. Forgot to mention that. Um, can't count out Jokic, can't count out Jamal Murray in Denver. But something is off about this Nuggets team. They've let guys go over the past couple years. They weren't as deep as a year ago. And again, I think that the likes of Anthony Edwards not being afraid of Denver in the second round, They were up 2-0 on Denver. Lost their concentration. Jokic had a great game 5. Denver thought we got this, and Minnesota beat them by 50 in game 6. Came back, and Karl-Anthony Towns had a beautiful game 7. Turned out to be his second to last win in a Minnesota Timberwolves uniform. I still think alongside Julius Randle, I think that this just proves without Cat there, this is Anthony Edwards' team now. There will be more lane spacing, I believe, with Randle as opposed to Cat. Again, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, Houston, and I think Denver is still right there, though they're not as deep as they were a couple years ago. Okay, this is my out of nowhere team. I think people are forgetting here. I'm going to have them as the 5 seed in the West about Ja Moran. Now they add in Zach Edey. You add the likes of Desmond Bain and Dylan Brooks and those guys. Like Memphis was the 2 seed a couple years ago. They fell apart last year because obviously injuries and then the Ja Moran situation. Memphis took the ability to have one bad year, get the talent back. Now, I think the talent is better out west than it was 2 years ago. There's better teams, but I'm not discounting the Memphis Grizzlies out. That leads me to the 6 seed, who I think was last year's 5 seed. They made it to the NBA Finals. I think it will be the Dallas Mavericks, who again I think will struggle a little bit through the regular season. They caught fire last year in the postseason with those trade deadline acquisitions. Daniel Gafford was huge. Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving finally grew up right before our eyes. Him and Luka learned how to play together. I just think, we saw it last year with the Lakers, right? They made all those trade acquisitions, Jared Vanderbilt, Rory Hachimura, etc. at the deadline. They run to the Western Conference Finals. It was probably the closest 4 games I've ever seen anybody play Denver, and I said that about him a year ago as well. Obviously, LeBron and AD, but then the next year they just fall flat. Kind of feel the same way about Dallas. 7 is Phoenix. You guys know I don't love the fit between Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal. Too much talent there, in my opinion, not to make the playoffs. And then 8, I'll throw in LeBron and AD. Obviously, Suns and Lakers would have to win playing games, which could be against the likes of the Clippers. I don't think they're going to be as good without Paul George, and you can't trust the health of Kawhi Leonard. He's already out. I think it could be a long season for the Clippers. You got teams like Sacramento in there who I don't even know. They were very good a couple years ago. They were the number 3 seed, but it just feels like teams have sort of outjumped them. And De'Aaron Fox feels like he hasn't taken that next level yet. You got teams like New Orleans, who, along with Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, they were great at the end of last year. They got the 5 seed, though. In my opinion, or excuse me, they didn't get the 5 seed. They got the 8 seed. They won that second play-in tournament game to get Oklahoma City in the first round. Oklahoma City, who was a young team, disoriented them. I just think New Orleans, and I get it, they were right there with Dallas. They were right there with, the Lakers and all that for that number 8 seed. But I don't know. I don't trust the fact that Zion Williamson, can Brandon Ingram stay healthy and give you that kind of production again. I just don't know. So in the first round, it's going to be a great matchup. LeBron against and obviously idolizing Michael Jordan. There's a lot of characteristics there. The Lakers will give Minnesota good games. I don't think they can win the series. 4 or 5 at best. I got Minnesota taking out the old man Lakers. I got Oklahoma City. That young team, Kevin Durant cannot carry a team anymore. Kevin Durant facing his former team. I got Oklahoma City dispatching Phoenix in 4 or 5 games. Rockets Mavs, I think will be an interesting series. Again, I think Houston's youth is just going to overcome Dallas, who I think will become too Luka dependent again. They're going to go back to the Luka Doncic that we've sort of seen before this last postseason. Houston wins, and then Zach Edey's a good young player, but I don't think he can handle Nikola Jokic down low in a 7 game series. I think Jamal Murray does his best against John Morant. John Morant will put up a lot of points. Desmond Bain will try to give them good shooting. In the end, Denver's the better team. And so I do have the first 4 from the West making it out. So a rematch of last year's second round, we got Minnesota and Denver. And again, quite frankly, at this point today, I think Denver probably has the best player, and generally you take the best player in the series. Minnesota's got confidence. I think Denver, this could be another 7 game series. This time, though, they go to Minnesota in a game 7. Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, they're going to win games. They don't have the depth the T-Wolves do. The T-Wolves will move on to take on a Thunder team who is primed and ready. And Shea Gilders-Alexander, this was the best team in the West last year. They ran into a red-hot Dallas team, and they could have won a game 6 in Dallas. Obviously, that box out and then the three by PJ Washington to clinch that game was huge. So, but to me, the Thunder are ready, right? This is the Thunder year. They're going to come back. They're going to play well. And so I do have representing the NBA Finals a number 3 seed Boston Celtics, a number 2 seed Oklahoma City Thunder. And I do think this is possible that for the first time in franchise history in 6 games, Shea Gilders-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, the Boston Celtics do not go back to back because the Oklahoma City Thunder do win it a season or before when the Seattle Supersonics are going to take their team back because of NBA expansion. I think Shea Gilders-Alexander arrives. This is his season. He wins the NBA Finals MVP. The Thunder are young, they are deep, they are hungry. And as I talked about, as we look at the changing of the guard in the NBA from really the past few seasons, one thing in the NBA has stayed the same. Outside of the last few years, yes, a 5 seed Dallas team made the NBA Finals, and yes, an 8 seed Miami team made the NBA Finals, but there have only been 2 teams in the history of the National Basketball Association to win the NBA championship, not from a top 3 seed. The 1960 Boston Celtics did it as a 4 seed. The 1995 Houston Rockets did it as a 6 seed. That Houston Rockets team was going to be about a 2 or a 3 seed. Hakeem Olajuwon got hurt midway through the year. They dropped out. He returned during the postseason run. Michael Jordan was out of the NBA for one more season at that point. Houston goes on to win the championship. So it's been 30 years since we have not seen a top 3 seed win the championship, which means, according to my standings, the 6 best teams winning the NBA championship this year: Milwaukee, New York, Boston, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, Houston. Say that out loud. I think it makes sense. If you want to replace Milwaukee, with maybe a Philly, if they all stay healthy throughout the year, I'll hear your argument on that. Out west, if you want to replace Denver with Houston, again, I'll hear your argument on that. I just think Denver, I thought they were going to be a dynasty a year ago, and they made some bad financial decisions, and now it just feels like it's a Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray led squad. But in the end, I think Shea Gilders-Alexander, Anthony Edwards, Giannis Antetokounmpo, somewhere around there. Those guys, along with the likes of Jalen Brunson, Jalen Green, will be competing for MVP. I think Coach of the Year, may go to Ime Udoka for getting the Rockets all the way up there. I could see Memphis's coach. I'm drawing a blank on right now because of the fact I have them rising to the 5th seed. Jamal Mosley, maybe for a 5 seed Orlando team potentially. And, I think it's going to be a very competitive NBA season. And as we know, as I've talked about, the reason why I don't talk a lot of NBA during the regular season, at least during football season, is because once we get to the postseason, it is indeed a different sport. Like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.